The dumbest thing someone can do is try and look smart. And the smartest thing that they can do is be an idiot. Now, what do I mean when I say be an idiot? Now, I don't mean to go out of your way and play the character of a moron, to be freaking Bojangles the clown, to be the jester. But what I'm trying to say is don't go out of your way to also play the character of being smart. In a way, it's more about just being yourself. And let's face it, is that a lot of us nowadays are just idiots. So just be an idiot. Now, what I'm not saying is not to have the capability of intelligence, because that's very necessary. I'm saying is that someone should have the capability of skill or of intelligence or of being smart, but not have the need to express it. And of course, this differs between some people, because some people are naturally just more inclined to intelligence than others. Some people are more naturally expressive of their intelligence than others. And that's just why it's important to just be yourself and not to play a character or something that you're not. I've come up with 5 reasons to back up my point. The first of which is you have less expectations, because how you present yourself creates expectations of your character to other people. If I present myself to other people as being smart, then I am expected to do smart things. If I present myself to other people as myself, then I'm expected to be myself. If I present myself to other people as being a drug addict, I'm expected to do drugs. Most of the people in your life know you not based off who you really truly are, but based off how you present yourself to them. Not only do you have less expectations, but it's also more impressive if you do something that's actually intelligent. For example, for all my Caucasian viewers out there who know the movie Good Will Hunting, which I know you do because you don't have melanin, what about that scene where Will casually just destroys the Harvard kid at the bar? You know, this super intelligent Harvard student got owned by a guy who learned from books. Or maybe the movie wouldn't even be as known as it is if it wasn't the janitor that solved that math equation. If it was just a professor or somebody who was expected to do it, it would be less significant. A really stupid example, many cartoons use the dumb characters to create memorable moments by just having them do something that isn't dumb. For example, there's like this scene of Patrick Star coming up with a brilliant plan for no reason. There's also that Gravity Falls episode where the pig turns to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Even in my own life, some of the best advice I've gotten is from friends and family who don't need to express their intelligence, and they know when to be smart, when to be an idiot. They know when to give advice and when not to. The second reason is there's no pressure. Not having expectations creates no pressure. When you have expectations of performance, there is pressure. Think about like freaking America's Got Talent. There's definitely pressure when you're expected to perform your talent to the best of your ability. Having this expectation, especially in a long period of time with a relationship with somebody else who expects you to do the things which you don't necessarily are naturally inclined to do, leads to anxiety and restlessness. Because when somebody acts smart, they're in the constant need to try to prove that they are smart. The constant need of having to, in a way, perform limits oneself of actual knowledge, because the focus is on the performance rather than actual reality. And what do I mean by that is when somebody's having a conversation with somebody and not necessarily listening to the words that they are saying, which a lot of the times you can learn from other people in conversation, they're just kind of in their mind thinking of what they could say next. They're formulating their next sentence in their mind to try to perceive it as being smart. They're not observant, but they are rather closed-minded. The third reason is people just find you to be real, because most of the time it's actually just obvious when somebody's just playing a character.
This guy's a gangster. His real name's Clarence.
Common signs of this is that people typically just talk way too much. They interrupt you mid-sentence and they try to use complex vocab words which aren't necessarily, conversation material. Like, this is my stupid brain thinking, but in a way there's like kind of words that are meant to be written, to be read, and then there's words that are meant to be spoken or to be written, read, and also like spoken in like a professional matter. But if you're just like having a casual conversation with somebody and they use the word like iridocyclitis or something, like, come on, man. My favorite thing to do, I'm kind of a dickhead, is to ask people to spell the word that they just said. And a lot of the times it just throws them off. It's like, someone just asked me to spell this word. There's instances where they can't spell it. It's like, why are you using a word you can't spell? Trying too hard to be wise by talking too much kind of proves somebody to be a fool. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. You could be dumb as a rock, but if you just understand and listen to somebody, you're probably going to present yourself to be smarter than what you actually are. Also, people are more comfortable with people who are comfortable being themselves. And the constant need for somebody to always seek validation in their intelligence is a sign of just low confidence. The fourth point, it's just more fun to be an idiot or to just be yourself. I mean, if you think about our childhood, when we're just young, dumb, full of wonder, curiosity, and creativity, a lot of us think that our childhood was kind of fun. A lot of times people have miserable childhoods because they were forced to grow up too quickly. Even right now, one of my favorite memories is being an idiot with my friend as we're trying to learn how construction cranes get to the work site. A big reason why it's more fun is because the constant need to prove intelligence is more of a mental battle than it is external performance. Because it all takes place in the mind. There's a constant spiral of thoughts of how am I going to say this thing? What am I going to say? What is the message I'm trying to portray? This, that, and the other. How am I going to prove myself to be smart? And this constant spiral of thoughts is not enjoyable and it's not peaceful. I find that I'm more at peace when my mind is just simple. Not when it's blank, but when it's just simple, when it's not loud. And not only is it much more peaceful to be in this state, but in a way it's much more impactful in one's life. The constant state of somebody's mind always being in a spiral, in a loop, creates paralysis by analysis. And that's a very real thing, where the mind is so quick to go from one point to the next, to always be switching thoughts. They just don't know what to do. And when you don't know what to do, you're never really going to take action. My dog is snoring. And the second point on the matter is that sometimes when somebody is trying to deem themselves to be smart, they avoid embarrassment, they avoid failure, because that would hurt the ego that they're trying to protect. They don't really ever take risks, or they learn to fail correctly. And what that does for an individual is, especially for the youth, such as I, failure is the best teacher. Because when you fail, you learn, you bounce back, you get back up, and you learn from your mistakes. And oftentimes, failure requires a decision that is just vastly illogical, because it requires risk. With no risk, no reward. And with the risk, there's a chance of failure. Now, I'm an actual Goomba. I wanted to put a quote to back up this point that I was making, but I didn't know one. So I asked Claude to give me a quote and explain it. And it gave me this quote by G.K. Chesterton. "The madman is not the man who has lost his reason. The madman is the man who has lost everything except his reason." And then his explanation was the whole argument is that the madman's logic is actually airtight. He never fails with his own system. He's perfectly consistent, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous. Pure logic with no room for mystery, humility, or being wrong. The person who acts and fails is at greater peace than the one who doesn't. Thank you, Claude. Very cool. Now, my fifth and final point, and I'm sure there's other points that you guys can think of, and if you have a reason, put it in the comments down below. Please give me traction on this channel. Anyway, my fifth and final point is humility. Because at the end of the day, the constant need of expression of skill boils down to feeding one's self-esteem. It's trying to have a heightened image in front of other people to try to look better. And not projecting yourself at all, just being yourself, or even in extreme cases, acting a fool, is all a practice of humility. There's saints in the Orthodox Church that have acted a fool to practice humility. And I know that I gave an example of Patrick Starr earlier, and now I'm talking about saints, but bear with me, please. There's fools for Christ. For example, St. Gabriel of Georgia acted a fool in many ways. He would do somersaults in the middle of divine liturgy, where people who knew that he was a holy man had no idea why he was doing the thing he was doing. As a child, he would throw himself in a trash can to call himself trash. There's even instances where he pretended to be drunk. And there's a story where a group of young men went to seek wisdom and guidance from him, and he was drinking grape juice, acting like it was wine, and dancing and being all drunk. And then he ended up giving like very, very profound and wise advice to one of the individuals who was judging him for being drunk. when it was just grape juice. To go back to Chesterton's quote, and this is me this time, this is not Claude. St. Gabriel literally burned a portrait of Lenin in front of the entire communist regime, which is one of his most memorable and impactful actions. But this is the most illogical action you could ever have. What purpose, what benefit would it draw to do that? In fact, he got jumped and thrown in prison and almost died because of his action. But it was this action that inspired many people who have heard the story. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who is humbled will be exalted. All in all, the point I'm coming to is the idea of being meek. And what does it mean to be meek? It is the capability of doing something, but not doing it because it isn't prudent, because it wouldn't serve any good. Being capable of intelligence, but not using it in a distorted way to feed an individual's ego. Now, in Greek, the word translated as meek in Matthew 5:5 was actually used to describe a wild horse that had been tamed. The horse lost none of its strength. However, it just knows how and when to use it. It still has everything it had, but it doesn't use it for wild and evil actions. The 5 reasons I just gave, no pressure, no expectations, the authenticity, the fun, the humility, it all just boils down to this one word. That's cold. So be smart and be stupid.